Let's just start.
Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, rather, if you are joining from somewhere else, or if you are watching it later, good day. My name is Tejas. Welcome to one more session of Biochar series. Very quick, I thought I would take a couple of minutes this time to introduce folks rather than rushing into our session. Uh, This event is jointly done by Shekru Foundation and 2.0 Farms. Shekru Foundation is started by Anand Krishna. Shekru mainly has been operating in doing the agricultural extension program, bringing in uh, the knowledge to the farmers, closer to the farmers. And it's been done doing this, especially in Marathi, and being true to where it was initially found. And a similar organization, which I would like to claim it for a little part, not as much as Shekru has been 2.0. We are a village born, you could say, startup or an entrepreneurs or a group of people that have been trying our hands at a lot of different things that can be termed as sustainable, good, easy sometimes, no common sense practices and everything at our own farm in rural Andhra Pradesh, a village-born, farmer-led experiments, group of experiments. And biochar has happens to be one common topic among the farmer group for us, Shekru, and a lot of different stakeholders from around the world now. And today we have a very good guest joining us in the name of Swapnil Pawar. He is the co-founder and CEO of AQSI. And it was very interesting to learn where the name came from. And it's advancing sustainability, quality, and impact. That reminded me of Lexus being very simple and straight. I love that. Swapnil is a tech and finance expert with an experience of 20 years. He's passionate about using technology for incentivizing and financing a more sustainable economy. At AQSI, he focuses on product design, sustainability research, and business development. Swapnil is also a major proponent of decentralized economy and has had led the development of Neural, a layer one blockchain developed by the ASQI team. One of the interesting things that I have noticed about ASQA also is that we have seen a rush of people coming into biochar and coming it not necessarily from the agriculture side, but chemical engineering side, carbon markets, sustainability markets, philanthropy and CSR. But I and Anant, I believe, will hold closer people that come from agriculture side because we have come from there and we think it adds a lot of value and has the power to bring this CDR into back into the hands of farmers in some form, whether they are users or whether they are producers of biochar. So it's very interesting that ASQI has ASCII, as far as I believe you pronounce it, has come from the agricultural side into biochar because we would love to hear Swapnil go into the details of his agri journey, building an agri-tech startup, and then jumping into biochar as well. And this would be a first in our series. So I'll cut short the introduction because I am swaying away. So yeah, he's come back from tech and started his sustainability journey and has been doing very interesting things in agriculture. Now, I think with the addition of biochar, it'll only get better from what our experiences have been with regenerative farming, natural farming, and trusting nature a little bit more than our own minds, our own labs, and the chemicals that we are playing with. So, thank you all for joining, or if you're watching it later, uh, let me present you Swapnil Pawar, co-founder and CEO. He will take us through a short presentation, and then we can have a good, engaging Q&A with him. Swapnil, over to you. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks so much, Tejas, for the kind introduction. And I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me on this
on this forum, and I'm sure we'll need a lot more of this if we were to make the biochar revolution, as I call it, happen in India. Call it Black Revolution, if you will, following the Green Revolution back then, which is the need of the hour, because back then we needed more food. Now we need a sustainable soil which will hold good for the next 100 years, not degrade in the next 10, 15 years to nothingness. So thanks again for getting me here. I'll give a quick introduction of myself in the context of our conversation today, and then move on to the presentation. I come from a small village in Nasik district called Vadner. It's essentially a farming ecosystem. My cousins still grow grapes, onions, tomatoes, and so on. I grew up around farms. In farms during my vacations and all that. I've seen the ups and downs in the lives of farmers. One of the most memorable and unfortunate incident that stayed with me was seeing tractor full of onions sort of thrown on the road near Pimpalgaon, Nifar, that area, because the farmers couldn't afford to pay for even transport given the price in the market for onions. Obviously, onions go to their own volatility, but that sort of made me realize the sheer magnitude of uncertainty that farmers live with. And I hoped that I could do something about it. I studied engineering, IIT Bombay, then my MBA was in Ahmedabad, worked briefly with the Boston Consulting Group, then been in technology for a while. But none of this was basically adding up to something which I could say was direct contribution to my roots, where I came from. And around 2021, when we were trying to figure out what to do, which a startup can do meaningfully, scalably, and in a commercially viable manner, that's when the work in agri-tech started. So in a way, ASQI brings together two of my passion areas. One, improving agriculture in India, especially farmer livelihoods, and then all adjacent areas around it. And two, climate action. While reading through all the climate reports through 2010s and even early 2020s, I couldn't help but feel a sense of helplessness, that there's not much you can do but read and feel sorry that climate is changing and there is greenhouse gas emissions which are continuing. So in ASCII, we're trying to now act, basically saying, let's not just whine, let's not just feel worried about changing climate, let's do something concrete, which is carbon sequestration. So all of this brings us to essentially the yield enhancement through technology and biochar. That's what we are focused on right now. So let me quickly share my screen and walk through a few slides relevant to this topic. So we call it climate smart agriculture. What I mean by that is essentially agriculture which is resilient to climate change and also contributing its as much as possible to reducing its impact. We will see how. Two things that stand out: biochar and AI. So that's what we're using essentially. And these obvious aspirations, better farmer livelihoods, coming from where I do, that to me is top of mind. If you improve farmer livelihoods, a lot of other things will fall into place. But the way to do that cannot be just increasing yields through genetic modification and so on. That has been tried and tested and worked well for us, but it's unfortunately not sustainable. And it's starting to come to a turning point now where we could actually be staring at a food security crisis. So how that is to be handled: lower pollution, avoiding stubble burning, if you will, simple but very, very big problem, and durable carbon sequestration. So all of this is what we're trying to do. The problem we're solving, what are we addressing? Now, if you start thinking about problems in Indian agriculture, everybody will tell you a long list of the problems themselves. The farmers will tell you something, policymakers will tell you something, experts will tell you something. And genuinely, all of those problems are there. Obviously, we are a single startup and a small team. We want to use our focus and bandwidth to address just one. And we address that to be soil quality. The erosion in soil quality is massive. Just to give a single number, soil organic carbon, just a measure of how healthy the soil is. It's gone from like 1% plus to 0.3, 0.4%, some cases even 0.2% in most Indian soils. What does that mean? It actually means we are becoming closer to a desert soil, starting from a jungle soil, right? And so that's the continuum. A soil in say Abu Dhabi or Dubai would be soil organic carbon of 0.01, maybe even lesser. And we used to be like, say, Africa, which is 2.5%. And we've steadily gone down for various reasons. But now what that means is SOC is not just a theoretical concept. It immediately means yield impact for farmers, cost implications. To get the same yield, they have to put more fertilizers, more water, or they get lesser yield if they put the same amount of fertilizers as earlier. So the falling yields, and it's a vicious cycle, because if you put more fertilizers to keep the yield the same, that makes the problem worse, because chemical fertilizers and lack of excess use of chemical fertilizers and lack of organic fertilizers is what brought this in the first place. So we're essentially marching into desertification of soils at this rate. And the vulnerability of farmers to climate change. This year, monsoon came sooner than normal. And then for people in the city, that was just annoyance at best, or relief from heat at best. But for farmers, a lot of them, it actually had a livelihood impact. This reduced the quality of their produce in case of some fruits and all. It reduced marketability of many vegetables and a lot of losses in general. And this is not going to be a one-off thing, unfortunately. All these extreme climate events are going to happen more and more frequently as we go along. What used to happen once in 100 years will happen once in 10 years. Whether it's excess, shortage, erratic rainfall, warmer, colder weather. This February was warmer. So this year's wheat harvest in North India is actually lesser than expected because it didn't germinate enough through February. All of this leads to a potential food security challenge. In India, and obviously India is 1/6 of the world, so in the world as well. And also India is a net exporter of food. So our challenge is the world's problem as well. Now, as we look to address this specific thing about soil, so we're not handling, for example, anything around seeds, which are more resilient, or water, or pesticides. These are all very good things in their own right, and then others are working on it. We are only focused on soils. But as we focus on soils, we asked ourselves, can we, as ASQI, we're not talking about market size here, just as ASQI, can we reduce 1% of India's annual GHG emissions? That's 45 million tons of CO2. Just to put it in context, India emits about 4.5 billion tons of CO2 annually. So can we reduce 1% of it through our action directly? Can we reduce 5% of India's pollution, which is a lot of it was to do with stubble burning? Can we cut down usage of water in agri in India by 2%? And can we touch and improve livelihoods of 10% of Indian families? Now, this might seem like soil plus these four are 5 different businesses, and indeed they could be. But the good news is there is a single solution to all of this, which is biochar. So we believe it's a dream solution for sustainable agriculture for a simple reason, for a simple set of reasons, which is these. We buy stubble from farmers, whether it's cotton stalk, paddy straw, maize, sugarcane, crop residue as well as bagasse, soybean, so on. Mind you, I didn't mention wheat because it is already used for cattle fodder. So we're not trying to buy useful crop residue and put it to alternate use. We're buying things which are burnt. That's about 280 million tons of crop stubble in India each year is burnt. That's because the farmers don't have incentive to take it out carefully, and they simply say, what will I do with it? So the other day I was talking to a farmer in Karad, and I was telling him that, look, we can potentially make a biochar here with this local Quantikin or something. And he, nice that he was, he actually kept his straw. He didn't burn it. But for whatever logistical reasons, we couldn't get the kiln there in time. And he told me that, look, I tried everything under the sun, but I can't do anything with this now. It's just sitting in the corner of my farm. And obviously, there have been ideas like mulching and so on and so forth, which obviously helps, but it's not deepened enough. So then the simplest thing is just burn it. They say that, it costs zero, like just one matchstick to burn it. Now we buy this biomass, which would have been burnt, not the biomass which was used otherwise. When we buy it, we essentially telling farmers that you're setting money on fire if you if you light it. So however small that amount of money is, some farmers are actually happy enough to simply say, pay us enough to just afford the labor to remove it. That's all. or you'd remove it yourself and take it away. Don't bother paying us anything, or don't ask us for any money. Either way, just do it yourself. Our farm is open to you for 2 days. So it's at that level. So it's available freely if you just figure out what to do with it. Because if you didn't have a use for it, like making biochar, or some people do CBG, it is very bulky. It's very hard to manage. So one knows the angst that the farmers have as to what to do with it if you don't use it. So 1 ton of biochar saves 25 kilograms of PM10 particle emissions, because it essentially consumes 3 tons of biomass. So that avoidance of that biomass burning actually is this 25 kgs. That's a sizable number. And when I said 5% of India's air pollution we could reduce, is through essentially buying the biomass. Then we bring it to our biochar plant, and we create what we call enriched biochar, which is a mix of biochar plus compost, vermicompost. We can even put manure in it, anything which is organic and nutrient rich, so that it is saturated before you put it in soil. Now, before we come to the farmer benefits, the very simple act of making biochar and putting it in soil actually sequesters carbon in a very stable form for almost 1,000 years. So that's 1 ton of biochar sequestering 2 tons of CO2 from atmosphere. And if you do it in a manner which is auditably measurable, verifiable, and reportable, so-called MRV, you actually get carbon credits for it, which we do, as in for both of our plants. We have 3 now. So 2 are registered already, and 3rd is on the way to getting registered. So you get carbon credits. Technically, even if you didn't put it in soil with farmers, and you just put it in a coal mine, just put it back so that it can never be taken out, that is still good enough from a carbon credit perspective, even if you didn't have any other benefits. The good news is biochar is such a versatile substance that it does have other benefits, which is in fact the core benefit we are after, which is soil improvement. Now, how does biochar help on soil? For a simple reason of its chemical and physical properties. 50 grams of biochar has the surface area of a football field. It's a very porous substance, so it's a lot of area out there for water, nutrients, microbes to thrive. It acts as a hotel for microbes, as we call it. And the chemical properties is also nutrient friendly, so it sort of holds on to nutrient. It holds on to water. So if you actually have less water, excess dryness, biochar conserves water in the soil, so your crops can grow better. If there's excess rain, normally, so farmers in Kowar told us this, that the big problem is June, July, August, the sugarcane doesn't grow, whatever you do, because everything that you put in the soil for nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, NPK, fertilizers, they just leach away. So while one solution is to spray it, which some of them are doing, other is to simply make the soil more retentive of nutrients despite the excess water. So on both sides, it helps. So overall, this leads to a 20,000 per acre higher income for farmers. I'll show some examples where the numbers are even better, but conservatively 20,000 per acre per year is easy. You don't need to put it every year. Once in 5 years is enough. You can save in fertilizers next year onwards. You can save in the first season itself, but later also. And you will use less than, use about 500,000 liters of water, lesser. So all of these are basically the SDG, as we call it, Sustainable Development Goals, but it has an implication for farmer in simple P&L. You make 30,000 per acre more per year. Simple enough. And the cost is about 15,000 to put it. So your payback is very first year, and then second year onwards, it's just free because you don't need to put it again for 3 or 4 more years. So this is the process, pyrolysis. Any organic biomass is good enough. So all crop stubbles are fine. You can even use what do I call it? Rice husk from a rice mill, or the groundnut covers from the groundnut processing mill. All of these can also be used. Anything which is organic in the sense, anything which is a crop-like, either made in the farm or in a factory as a side product or a byproduct, all of that is good. Even sugarcane bagasse is fine. So all of that is brought to a certain moisture level, 20% or less, and then heated at 350 to 500 degrees Celsius without oxygen. So that's the crucial part. Some people ask me, why is it different from burning? In burning, it's with oxygen through and through. So you basically get ash. near 100% ash at the end of the process. If you heat it without oxygen, you get biochar. That's the difference. So this process emits very less CO2, biochar making process, which is how you basically sequester the carbon. The carbon remains in biochar. In ash, you basically burn most of it out and CO2 is back in the air. So that's the difference. Not even talking about the pollution and so on. This is not a polluting process. Pyrolysis is a very minimal emissions. If the process is automated, so we use artisanal kilns, which are simple Contiki kilns, for want of various for various reasons. But if you use a industrial process, you can also get syngas from it, which is essentially a byproduct, which can be used for as a fuel. Part of it to run the process and bulk of it available for selling. You also get bio oil that can also be sold commercially. So this actually obviously is a very intricate process, but it's in public domain and there's enough and more service providers or equipment providers. This is the one I meant for the sample. This is a microscopic sample, 100 micrometer magnification. You see the porosity of it. That's why it is great for retention of water, great home for microbes, and all the good things that happen to crops is because of this chemical and physical property. So it's about 70-80% carbon. Now that's the science, right? What do you do on the ground? So we have a bias to decentralize biochar plants for a simple reason that there is no way somebody can set up one huge biochar plant in the middle of the country, let's say Nagpur or Bhopal, and supply the country with it. It's not like chemical fertilizers, which are relatively more, what do I say, compact, or it's like pesticides, which can be made even overseas and brought here. Biochar is very bulky, and the raw material that goes into it is also very bulky. All of this stops making sense, economic sense, if you cross 200 kilometers either way. Sourcing, you should actually bring it within 50 kilometers. Selling shouldn't go beyond 150, 200 kilometers at the max. 100 is probably ideal. What that means is you shouldn't actually have 1 lakh ton capacity biochar plants anywhere. Everywhere it makes sense to do 3 to 5,000 tons of biomass processing, maybe 10,000 at the most, and produce 1,000 to 2,000 tons of biochar, mix it with compost, about another 1,000 tons, 1:1, let's say, and sell the 2 to 3,000 tons or 2 to 4,000 tons of enriched biochar. That covers the nice taluka level or 2-3 talukas put together. That's the scale. And that's why I prefer the decentralized model. It's also less prone to breakdowns and so on because there are not too many moving parts. It's a bit labor intensive, but the flip side of that is to say, okay, it's also then generating employment. So that's why we use the Contiki flame curtain kiln. You see some of these at the bottom, the 3 kilns we have in operation. Biomass, this is the cotton stock biomass we procured in Khargone and Amravati. And this is the output, the biochar on the right-hand side. So this is mostly for demo purposes. This is a research plant. Obviously, we are setting up commercial plants also as we speak. But this is just to do the R&D, what works, what doesn't, and so on. Now, the impact of all of this, if you look at the specific numbers, on the right-hand side, I've listed all the possible connections on SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And the sequestration credit generation numbers are 3,000 tons of biomass is processed, 900 metric ton of biochar is produced, about a third, 30% conversion. 1,800 tons of CO2 is removed, and potentially one can earn 1.8 crores of revenue through combination of biochar sale and carbon credit sale. Now, farmer incomes on the other hand, so the payoff to farmers is also very good. So 2% additional income due to just selling the recipe. This can be neutral to them, but at least it can also be positive. Conservatively, a 15% improvement in revenue, as in crop yield, through better output quantity as well as quality, and saving some fertilizers, 10 to 13% savings. So, and there's also 30 plus local jobs. We have some more sites coming in Maharashtra, but that's broadly the lay of the land on one specific plant. Now, this is what we actually, when we did the demo in 3 farms in Khargone, this is what we came up with, which is we tried 3 farms, 0.5 acres, 1 acre, 2 acres. Now, this is half the farm. There is another farm of the exact same size, I mean, as much as possible. 0.5, another 0.5 acre farm, which is where we don't put enriched biochar. So that's what we did in all three cases. Now look at the changes, right? 2.1 quintals output for a half acre farm. Another half acre where we did put the biochar was 3.5 quintals. So a 67% jump. 4.7 went to 6.9, a 50% jump. 7.4 went to 11.5, a 55% jump. On an average, 4.2 per acre, quintals per acre went to 6.6 quintals per acre. That's about a 56% jump. We conservatively tell farmers that you'll get about 20 to 30% more. This is a concluded experiment in just May, June, July. This is green gram, so moong, basically. So you can see on the right-hand side, the look and feel of the plant is also superior. If you saw it on the farm, you will actually see the distinction right away. This is the output difference. Without enriched biochar, you see the diversity of colors, smaller size. With enriched biochar, it's uniform, greener, and higher quality. It's slightly bigger also. So the farmers get 10 to 15% better price per quintal also because of this. Now, as we were growing this, you could see the visible impact. Without EBC, you see average growth versus uniform growth, isn't uniform and vigorous growth. If you pull out to a plant, you'll see shallow roots versus deep and well spread roots. If you see pests, they are more susceptible without EBC, better resistance with EBC. And flowering was uneven for normal plants, timely and uniform for biochar-based plants. Pod formation, the specific things in moong, fewer and smaller. This is more and larger. So in sugarcane, you see more of those, what do you call it? These bits which come in a sugarcane, right? The length is larger and number of the segments is more. So each crop has its own unique properties, but improved quality as well as better quantity. So that's what we do on the biochar side. Now we also help farmers through what we call farm app. We do soil testing, satellite data, on ongoing advisory on a weekly basis. So this is an example of satellite data on the left-hand side. You see the farms are mapped, and then we use Landsat and Sentinel, their data to get a sense of irrigation in the farm. How is it doing over the entire 10 by 10 meter resolution, the entire farm? Where is it excess, where is shortage, 7-day irrigation planning, and then crop growth, where is it doing well, where is it not doing well, what should they do about it, so on and so forth. So, and there is a weekly report sent to farmers saying, okay, this is going well in your farm, this is not going so well, so on and so forth. We also enable farmers to detect diseases using AI. So this is an example of that. We see crop health by uploading a picture or taking a picture live. And we get an output which essentially says, okay, is this healthy or there's a disease with certain degree of probability. And this is the disease and what to do about it. Right? If there are specific alerts for a farm, we also send it as an alert to farmers on WhatsApp, and sometimes even do a AI agent based call. So they actually get to hear it also, not just get an alert on WhatsApp.
हम फार्म ऐप टीम से कॉल कर रहे हैं। आपके कोवाल स्थित गन्ने के खेत में पानी का स्तर न्यूनतम आवश्यक स्तर से नीचे पहुंच गया है। हम आपको सलाह देते हैं कि आप जल्द से जल्द खेत में सिंचाई करें। कृपया WhatsApp पर भेजी गई हमारी अलर्ट रिपोर्ट चेक करें। धन्यवाद।
So I don't know whether you've been able to hear it or not, but that was just this alert, which was a call made through an AI agent to the farmer about reduced irrigation in his farm. So the alert was to tell him that please irrigate at the earliest and check out the reports that we sent to you on WhatsApp also. So anyway, that's basically the, what I call it, the offering, the biochar and the farm app. What we do is we partner with, so we want to set up 100 plants over the next 2 years. And we know that we don't want to do it all by ourselves. There is for various reasons. It just doesn't make sense to just be going it alone on this. So we're looking for partnerships with farmers, FPOs, entrepreneurs, private limited companies. And we work in 2 models. One model is simple, low engagement model, where investment, setup, unit operations, carbon credit issuance is all done by us. the FPO or whosoever local entrepreneur help us source the biomass, get paid for it, sell the biochar, and get paid for it. So that's a low engagement model. Also, a high engagement model where they make the investment, all of it or most of it. We still do the setup. The sourcing is still with them. Sale is jointly done. Operations also jointly done. So this is blue and green mixed. We still take the responsibility to do the carbon credit issuance and sale. Obviously, the payoff is better in the second model. Most of FPOs we've been speaking with can earn on an investment of about 1 crore, almost 25 to 30 lakhs a year, just their share of it through combination of biochar sale and carbon credit sale. We share that, both of that, 50-50 with them. So these are the models of partnership with FPOs. We work with a lot of them. There are a few federations that we are talking to now for more broader engagement. And that's going to be public very soon once the agreement is made. But we also partner with individuals, individual entrepreneurs. We are setting up a plant in Parbhani like that. Just entrepreneurs setting it up, and he is making the investment. He's also doing the sourcing operation, part of the operations. And we'll do the rest of it. We're also working with private limited companies who are in food processing or sourcing, and then they figure out a similar model. This is our plan. We want to, in terms of priority areas, we can improve it later, as in revise it later, but these are areas of our operation. Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh is the most prominent. Essentially, Amravati, Nagpur side, then Jalgaon, Nasik, Ahilanagar side, Pune, Satara, Kolhapur side, eventually Solapur, Sangli as well. A little bit in Telangana, but Vijayawada, if we can get a few agreements that we are currently working on through, maybe eventually parts of Tamil Nadu near Coimbatore, parts of Belgaum and Mehsana, Ahmedabad, etc. here, Indore and parts of it, Gwalior, and then parts of Bhopal and Western UP. So that's the long and short of my presentation. I'll pause here and open for questions, if any.
Wonderful. Thanks, Swapnil. That was quite a deep dive, and you covered a breadth of topics. And amazing. I do have some questions, but for housekeeping, I'll tell everyone that's joining, if you have any questions, please leave it in the chat window, wherever it is that you are joining from, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, what's the other one? Facebook, and Zoom. Bibhishan will be helping us relay those questions back here. Swapnil, someone is unmuted. Let me quickly unmute them.
Just continue.
Wonderful. Swapnil, that was amazing. And I do have some questions.
Just wait.
I think
continue, just continue.
Okay, wonderful. So
Sorry.
I have a few questions. I'll let Anant jump in if he has any. And if there is any question, then Bibhishan will be helping us. I'll go from last to first. That was very interesting that you have a very good plan on expansion, on where you are spreading out and all. I saw green and blue, different colors there. I just wanted to ask what they mean.
Okay. Green is immediate, like in the next 3 months, 3 to 6 months, and blue is subject to a set of things falling into place, say agreements with the federation, or there are a few companies that we are talking to right now, very large Indian listed companies in food processing, who have a lot of this captive farmer base from whom they buy the goods inputs, and they want to improve the soil organic carbon output and quality for those farmers. So those agreements then will push us in those blue areas, so to speak. Green is anyway on track. We'll do the green anyway, one way or other.
Wonderful. And it was very interesting that you have come up with models. You have thought through enough and come up with models, at least a couple of them, on how the engagement could be. And you have been very clear that you want to set up 100 plants, and brave enough to admit that you can't do all 100 plants, and you need collaboration, you need partnerships. That was very interesting for me. And vernacular audio updates and alerts for the farm. It's wonderful. As a farmer and fellow farmers, I think it's really going there and speaking their language and connecting with them was very nice. And you talked about 10 by 10 meter resolution updates at the farm. So how would that work out? What is the frequency of these updates, satellite data updates, and what would be an average cost per hectare for a farmer for these updates?
Right. So the 10 by 10 is basically what Sentinel and Landsat provides. So we just basically rely on that. And that's reasonably good for most farmers. They don't really need anything further than that. It's just basically saying this side is less irrigated, that side is more irrigated. That's good enough, largely. If they go to the farm, hold their phone in the hand facing north, they go to the south end, then this is a very good description of what's going on in their farm. Crop growth and irrigation are two big things. There are a bunch of other things one can do, but that is too confusing for users. So simple is this growth is good, this growth is not so good. So see what's going wrong in that area. And secondly, this is irrigated, this is not irrigated. So for next 2-3 months, it doesn't matter much, but once rains stop, it will start to be very important. Overall, as well as spatial, we do it once a day, as in that's what the satellites manage to do once a day at 7 o'clock in the morning. That's when we update it. And if there is serious shortage of water, we send the alert to farmers on WhatsApp immediately and calls after 9:30 a.m., 10 a.m. thereabouts.
Wonderful. I'll quickly rush through mine because we have a
cost part. So this is generally a service of about 1,000 rupees per acre per year for all of this.
1,000
soil test,
and
satellite data, AI alerts, crop doctor, weekly updates, so on. All of this is 1,000.
And is it limited to irrigation, or do you have other alerts also coming in here? NDVI, I think crop stress, yes, but are you also venturing into some kind of inputs other than biochar?
No, not currently.
Kind of.
We're currently saying that, okay, that's a crowded space and people have enough access. What they don't have, we want to bring. So for example, we were evaluating whether we should partner with someone to bring mechanical pest control devices like these traps. It's a very good, effective method to reduce insects and without putting too much chemical and costing very little. So some of those partnerships we're still evaluating. Drones we're evaluating. Again, not by ourselves, just partnering. Whatever is not available easily to farmers, that's the one we want to target. So biochar for us was a major area because it's just not there. Farmers don't know where to buy from. So we'll add a few other areas like that, but currently it's just these. And AI basically, so technology solutions like being able to get a quick response on whether this is a healthy crop or not, whether there's a nutrient deficiency based on what a leaf tells you a lot if you take a closer picture. So how do you interpret that? That's also part of the same engagement.
Wonderful. That's very interesting, but we'll stick to biochar. The trials were very, very nice that you did on the Ingram. But you talked about without enriched biochar and with enriched biochar. And you said enriched biochar in your case is biochar mixed with vermicompost.
Yes.
And can you tell a little bit about the mixing process, if that is okay? And what does without enriched biochar mean? What is control that we are looking at right now?
So first I'll answer how we make the enriched biochar, then I'll come to the control, right? So enriched biochar, it's a 7-day process. So you basically make the biochar, grind it, becomes a fine powder. Compost anyway comes in a fairly sort of fine form as it is. So we mix it mechanically. Is a mixer, bigger mixer version of our home equivalent only. Then we take it out, and the mixing is not enough. The biochar needs to saturate with it. It takes time. So it takes 7 days, which also then accompanies drying as well as saturation. So it's open sun drying. And then we bag it at the end of it, currently for demonstrations largely. The other question you asked me was on?
What is without biochar means? What is control here?
Oh, sorry, the control. So the control is basically doing the farming as they would have done without our interference, which means they would put fertilizers as they like. They'll put pesticides as they like. They'll irrigate it as they like. And just to be clear, the difference between control and the with enriched biochar part of the field was just biochar. So basically in the farmer's mind, it was a single field. We had artificially created a boundary, marked it, and said that in your head, don't think of it as two parts. Just do everything as normal. Irrigate it same, put the same fertilizers, put the same everything else identical. Just that in biochar will apply only for this section. So
Yeah,
enriched biochar.
usually when we talk to farmers, especially in the farm level workshops, a lot of question and debate happens around what is control, what is this. One farmer would come and say, "Hey, what if I add vermicompost as additional to this control? What if I remove this, add this?" A lot. So it's very interesting, uh, the results and the trials that we plan around this. So that's what.
In fact, sorry to interrupt, but we are in fact doing a much more formal experiment with Vasanthala Sugar Institute in Pune. That's for sugarcane, where they are doing the experiment. We just give them the biochar, they enriched it themselves. And they're doing various dosages. They have absolute control, then a control with moderate amount of standard NPK, but no biochar still. Then one with only compost, but no biochar. Then one with half ton per acre. Then 1 ton, 1.5 tons, 2 tons. So the studies will come out by end of September, October, when the harvest for the sugarcane happens. They planted it in Feb. We're already starting to see difference in quality in the sugarcane and the leaves and the uniformity of the crop, even there. So just adding to the same point.
I don't have any questions, but I just had some notes. So it's very nice that you have defined your radius, 200-kilometer radius. I think that makes things very easy, collection and then distribution. And I am hoping the map you showed is 200-kilometer radius also.
So those
It's
centers
very.
are multiple plants. So for example, in Amravati will have 2 to 3 plants. In Nasik will have 1 or 2. Same thing in Gwalior, I think, and Karad, Sangli, Satara probably have 3 maybe.
One last question before I jump to the questions that we have on the comment section is, how do you see the feedstock buying from farmers changing so far, and how do you see that landscape going in? Because suddenly everybody wants biomass, and yes, they'll give to you for free for the first season, second season, but they know what is happening. So how are you ensuring that farmer is part of this and wouldn't raise the price of biomass to 5 rupees a kg going forward?
It's a very important question. So 2, 3 mitigants from our side. First and foremost, just the sheer economics of it, of the location. So we, as a matter of principle, stay clear of CBG plants because they have a voracious appetite for biomass and they can outbid us. So we want to basically keep away, saying that's your area, and their area is not 200. They just go much further. So they'll end up bidding up the price. So that's clearly something we keep in mind as to what are other competing use cases around there. Second, the density. So I had mentioned, I think, in our informal chat that I had last month gone around this Maharashtra Darshan of sorts, where I went from Nasik, Sambhajinagar, Parvani, Dharashiv, Pune, back to Mumbai. And I found different terrain, different places. And in Dharashiv, for example, we concluded that we will not have a plant for quite some time because farmers there, it's a dry area, arid area, firstly. And the density of farming is much lesser than, say, just 200 kilometers north in Parvani. And so, or Jalna for that matter. Now, the dryness has 2 implications. One, lesser density of farming, but second, also farmers mulch a lot of the waste, which is a very good practice. We don't want to take away from that. So if they're already mulching, then why compete with that use case? So we want to almost trace where people are burning stubble and go in those areas. So for example, I don't want to obviously badmouth a specific district, but let's say parts of Madhya Pradesh, parts of southern Maharashtra, you see a lot of burning. You just can find it out. One fine day, you take a chopper, you find a bunch of smoke rising in all corners. And so that's priority areas for us. Density is high, burning is very, very frequent. So that's the second, that's geographical hedge or mitigant, if you will. Third is partnerships. So we partner with farmer producer organizations. Then we want to do some sort of a medium to long-term contract with them, saying you will get us this much biomass, and then members will underwrite part of it, and then others presumably can come through their influence. So that's why the partnerships, like us showing up from Mumbai and running around trying to gather biomass, is obviously a sorry state of affairs. It's best if a local FPO or FPC has already the buy-in from farmers. You tell them that, look, this year you might get a better price from someone else, but next year again you'll come back here only. So let's keep this going. And even if it's slightly lesser price, you're still getting something for it, which earlier didn't get anything. Third mitigant is the barter. In some cases, we're trying that, which is you bring us the biomass and we give you biochar, quote unquote, for free, but basically equivalent of that. So 160 kg of enriched biochar for 1 ton of biomass. So then for us also the costs go down. For the farmers also, they don't need to pay for biochar, they just get it basically for de facto for free. So all of these things basically then help us reduce the risk of biomass availability.
Wonderful. That's very interesting, Swapnil. I'll jump to the questions that are coming in the chat window.
Tejas, just one sec. The people who are in Zoom, shall we let them unmute and ask the question themselves? Because that, if they have multiple questions, they can ask one after the other. Rather
Yes,
than
I was
you.
going to do that.
Yeah.
I was going to
So
ask that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Namita,
go ahead.
sorry, Amita and Naresh, if you want to unmute and ask the question, please go ahead. Meanwhile, I'll start with the first question of Naresh. How is carbon credit measured? I mean, 1 ton of biochar is equal to how much credits? Is this first question. Naresh, if you want to unmute and ask your next question.
Right. That is my first question.
Understood. So there is the chemistry underlying carbon and CO2, right? So if you look at the molar mass of carbon and CO2, it's constant wherever you go in the world or universe for that matter. You will always get 3.36 tons of CO2 from 1 ton of carbon. So if you actually sequester 1 ton of carbon, you are technically sequestering 3.36 tons of atmospheric carbon dioxide. That's the gross amount. Then from that, you need to keep netting off all the costs. First and foremost, biochar is not 100% carbon. It is only 80% carbon. So that 3.36 comes down. Secondly, the process has some emissions. It's not zero. So you burn a little bit of biomass. You have a lot of, in case you have electricity usage and so on. So you have to net that out. We also have to net out the transportation emissions of bringing the biomass, which is why the 50-kilometer radius is a good thing, because if you bring it from 1,000 kilometers, you will not get any carbon credits. Likewise, selling. If you sell it within 100 kilometers, you have to still net off the emissions of the transport. So if you net all of these things out, depending on what exactly you're doing, you could get to a number between 1.9 and 2.2 thereabouts. We conservatively assume that 2 tons is a safe bet. In our case, for our first plant, we got almost slightly north of 2.05 or something after all these things were set off. So it's a nice, carefully done life cycle analysis of biochar, from biomass all the way to putting it in a farm, everything in between. I hope that answers your question of how we calculate it.
Naresh?
Yeah, sir. Actually, I have a FPO in Gujarat, North Gujarat, and I am interested in making biochar. Actually, I have an experience also. I have worked with Varaha.
I see.
By quantity method.
Right.
I have a bit of experience. You can count. I have 6 months experience, and I know its methodology of making biochar in quantities. So, are we also providing quantity methods?
Yes. So as I said, we found that to be the most reliable, robust, and easiest to implement method. Low capital intensity. It's labor intensive, but it's not prone to breakdowns and repairs and all that. So it's a very simple but effective method. So we should talk offline. We would love to explore that. We have some aspiration to do something in Gujarat, especially Mehsana, Himmatnagar, that side.
Mehsana is just near to me.
Perfect. So I had a couple of my corporate clients actually are in Mehsana. And so we're talking to them for the offtake side. So if you, for example, have that tied up, then we're very happy to work with you to produce biochar to sell.
So one most important question. As per my knowledge, the biochar can be made of waste. That is okay, but Vara is removing the bubbles, and they are making biochar from bubbles also. So is it possible in our side also that removing the bubble trees and making biochars?
So that's why we have to be careful. So we don't want to remove anything proactive. We want to go with things which would have been removed anyway. But following that logic, we can definitely do it. So The reason we prefer,
Actually, what Vara is doing is he is taking the permissions of the sarpanch of the village, and sarpanch gives in return the permission to remove the bubbles, and then we make the process of making biochar.
understood. I saw a version of this in where did I go recently? I forgot the exact location, but it was similar logic that what you're talking about is what we call invasive species.
Invasive
So
species,
bubble,
right?
so this bubble is not it's not the conventional tree subabul as we call
Yeah.
it, the other good ones. This is the invasive one, which is problematic for the flora and
Right.
fauna in that area. So it actually is best to remove it. Somebody should just take it out and everybody is happy for it. That is a great thing. So that obviously.
So, sir, I am very much interested in making biochar if it is possible from these bubble trees, because in Kutch area it's lots of bubble trees in thousands of hectares. You can count, means no other single tree with living these bubble trees. All the area is covered by these bubble trees.
Yes, that's the invasive species logic. We are very happy to do that because it solves additional problem that eco-diversity or biodiversity of that area is destroyed by the baboon.
Right.
And if you remove that, it will have a chance to become rich again. So yeah, absolutely, we should and we can do that.
Thank you, Naresh. I think your last question was average rate of carbon credits in international market in these years.
Right.
That's about $80 to $120. It's not a liquid market. It's not a very it's over the counter market. So different people have different arrangements. We've seen if you look at a site called cdr.fyi, that will talk to you about like transactions in various types of carbon removal credits and their prices, average prices, volumes, biggest sellers, biggest buyers, and so on. So,
sir, if as a FPO, if I am interested to join with you and work with your company, how is it possible? Means what you pay or
I'm writing my email ID here. Anybody can get in touch with us.
Good.
Happy to. We are in fact talking to a lot of FPOs in Maharashtra and MP also. Would love to do something concrete.
These both FPOs, these both IDs, email IDs?
Both are mine. As in, one is a general ID, one is my specific ID, Swapnil Pawar.
Okay, thank you. I'll copy this to your personal.
Thank you, Naresh.
Thanks,
Okay,
Naresh.
thank you, sir.
Hi, Amita. Would you like to unmute and ask the question that you had posted?
Hi, everyone. My question is about the non-conventional biomasses. Usually, what I'm seeing nowadays, people are more into the agricultural waste or maybe woody biomass, but we have different kind of waste as well as the manure, as the poultry litter, or maybe food waste, which are considered as the processed biomass. So, is there any possibility for the biochar making on a bigger scale and then acquiring the carbon credits out of them and then sell into the market the way usually biochar has been sold nowadays?
So the answer to your question is yes, yes, and no. So I'll describe which part is yes, which is no. It is possible to make it. The only caveat is, and this the answer to the no comes from that. And you'll get carbon credits also for it. That's why the second yes. And no to being using it in a conventional form by putting it in soil, for example, right? That's harder, and I'll tell you why. The food processed biomass tends to have high moisture more often than not, and so it is very difficult to. For example, one of the things we were evaluating was just go and sit next to the Washi Sabzi Mandi, right? APMC, and huge amount of waste every day happens there. Same thing in the other, same thing in many other APMCs. So just take that and instead of dumping it, put it in a pyrolysis process. Problem is it's moisture has to be brought down to below 20% for conventional pyrolysis of the sort that we do or many other machines do. There's also a wet pyrolysis method, which creates what is called hydrochar. The challenge with hydrochar is that then transportation of it, its shelf life, enriching it is a different ball game. So while you will get carbon credits potentially for it if you make sure that it's not used in any other form, using it in agriculture has a little bit of challenge because of the transportation complexity. And if you get the biomass of the sort like Sabzi Mandi refuse, that's fine because that is still organic. But if you look at other stuff, which is like municipal waste and so on, that starts to then go into territories where it could have heavy metals and other toxic elements. That is obviously not good for soil. So you're not going to take that and put back in soil. The good thing about agri residue-based biochar is that you know as a certainty that this came from farm. So if it goes back to farm, it's going to be neutral. Worst case, you won't introduce any new metals in the mix, toxicities in the mix. Whatever is there anyway, that we can't change. But municipal one or any other processed one can have new metals, which you may not want to expose the soil to. But the caveat to that no is that there is alternative uses of biochar, which has not to do with soil, but cement, concrete. There is almost you can put 10% to 15% of biochar in concrete, and that will still do. It actually improves the concrete quality, and you'll still get carbon credits because that is also sequestered for 1,000 years. I mean, it's there in the road or in the building, so it's gone. It's not burnt. So yeah, I think with those caveats, that's yes, no to your questions.
Thank you for the answer. So one more thing that I would like to extend, don't you think that the way biochar is produced nowadays, specifically in India and around the globe, with the material, with the feedstock nowadays has been used, don't you think that it may may be a challenge as a food feed conflict in future?
I worry about the fodder feed conflict. So that's a very legitimate and important question to answer. Some of the skeptics of biochar basically harp on that point as a major issue, and it is something to look out for. So we are working with the industry bodies to stabilize protocols for biomass procurement. In carbon credits, one of the burden of proof that we have to answer for is what was happening to the biomass earlier. The answer is that it was a cattle feed, then we don't get carbon credits because it was going somewhere useful anyway. So what are you diverting it for? Invasive species is a very good example that it wasn't anything. No cattle is going to eat it. They actually avoid it proactively. Rice straw, same thing. The nutritional content is so low that it's not useful as cattle feed. So one has to establish these protocols carefully and say that the burden of proof is on both the carbon credit agency as well as the biochar approving authority. There isn't one currently, but as that evolves, the manufacturer's responsibility is to tell them where they're getting the biomass from and what are the alternate uses of biomass, if any. But if the numbers were to be stated, I would say 280 million tons is how far we are from starting to get into a conflict zone. 280 million tons of biomass is burnt every year in India. So that's a lot of biochar. It's like 90 million tons of biochar can be made without diverting anything anywhere, frankly. And this, I'm not even talking about food processing industry byproducts, like which is not necessarily burnt in a conventional way, but it's processed into briquettes and ultimately burned, but in a more controlled manner. So it's not stubble burning, but it's still full carbon cycle. It's not sequestered. So we add that, we might even be talking about 400 to 500 million tons in India alone, which is biomass available for making biochar without any adverse effect on food ecosystem or even fodder ecosystem, leave alone food.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Wonderful. Suraj Singh, would you like to unmute and ask your question? Okay, I'll go on his behalf. Does ASQI have any plans to work on biochar in the Thar Desert region? There are many areas where the soil has carbon content less than 0.14%. And what is the requirement and cost to the farmer for 1 acre biochar application?
Yeah. So the desert use case is actually very strong and interesting one. As almost an innovation in farming. So it's not even to necessarily just improve soil organic carbon, but even to use improve water effectiveness, water productivity of more crop per drop logic, right? And that is nowhere more important than Rajasthan, in Thar Desert. The problem in Thar Desert is, as I said, one of the things that we talked about is density. Crop densities in Dharashiv itself is low enough that we start thinking whether we should have a plant here or not. In Thar Desert, the density is so low that to get, so most of our plants operate with 3,000 tons of biomass. Now, to get 3,000 tons of biomass in, say, I'll tell you two extreme examples. Godavari, East Godavari Basin, oil palm, you'll get it in like 5 kilometers, square kilometers radius, or 5 kilometers, 5 kilometers circle. In Thar, the 3,000 tons will have to come from almost 100, 150 kilometers circle, if you're lucky. So what we've been thinking about is to basically figure out a way to make biochar very close to Rajasthan, enrich it and send it there to use, because the use case is very strong. Making there is very difficult. So I think that's the short answer. In future, if we find areas where we can get a sizable biomass, then we could potentially use it. The other area we're exploring, it's very early days, but exploring is micro or nano plants, like 2 kin, 3 kin level. The challenge with the micro or nano plants is that 1,000 tons output is pretty much the floor for a carbon credit sort of engagement. So till the DMRV methodologies, digital measurement reporting verification methodologies, do not evolve enough to allow nano plants to also get carbon credits, or we figure out some way to make the economics work, which can work without carbon credits, then we can explore that, which is then you don't have to go hunt for 3,000 tons of biomass. You can just do with 20, 30 tons, which probably should be 2-3 villages, even in Thar Desert. So that model probably will work much better there. So that's...
And what's the...
Right.
Sorry.
If SOC, soil organic carbon, is 0.3, 0.4, then you're okay putting 1 to 1.5 tons of enriched biochar, so which is 50% compost, 50% biochar. If it's as low as 0.2 or even below, then you should put close to 2 tons, 2.5 tons of enriched biochar. But again, it's once in 5 years. You don't need to do it every year. And the cost of that is about 15 rupees a kg, so 15,000 per ton. So yeah, I think a slightly moderate SOC, you can get away with 15 or 20,000 rupee investment once in 5 years. Very low SOC, you have to go to 25, 30,000 rupees once in 5 years.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah. Hi, Swapnil. Sorry, due to some technical glitch, I was not able to unmute myself. So I have a similar question which relate to with my previous question. So is it feasible in the desert context or not to making biochar and at farm level or promoting with same areas?
The economics would dictate that making it in desert may not be ideal. It is demos will work, POCs will work, but scalability is poor. But putting biochar in soil or like applying it to soil will definitely make sense. So one has to just sort of, what do I say, forfeit a little bit of carbon credits. Let's say we make it in Mewar side. So and then we Kota or Jaipur thereabouts, and then transport it into Thar. We'll obviously lose some carbon credits in the transportation, but it's a cost well worth paying because the improvement in soil is so much that you can live with lesser carbon credits as a trade-off. So I think that probably is a better model than making it there, because that's going to be very hard. Labor is a challenge, biomass is a challenge. In general, then your commercials won't stack up.
Understood. And what if farmer buy and use in their field? Is it economically viable, or what is the scenario?
So what we've seen is in some crops, it's very immediate payback. So I'll give you a concrete example. Moong that I gave an example in the presentation, green gram. This farmers spend 20,000 rupees per acre, 15 to 20,000 rupees, slightly 1 to 1.5 tons per acre. They earned about 25,000 to 30,000 more per acre just for that one season. And then there'll be Kharif. This is all summer crop. And there's Kharif and Rabi. And we obviously don't want to put biochar again in that. It's done for 5 years. So within a season, they recovered their investment and more for that sort of crop. Now, rice and wheat, it will be slightly longer. It might be a whole year, one full season. Crops like grapes, bananas, chilies, and so on, you will probably recover 5x the investment within a year.
Okay. And on an average, how much time will take biochar to increase the carbon content of soil?
2 years, 2 to 3 years. There is
Two
immediate
to
benefit
three.
from the high quality saturated biochar, which releases the nutrients to the crop and so on. But genuine soil texture improvement is a gradual process. It will happen in 2 3 years. So if you measure SOC again, it will be gradual in the first year. Second, third year, it will start to show nice bigger numbers: 0.5, 0.6,
Okay.
0.75.
Mhm. See, the challenge is in this area particularly, the farmer has huge land size, but the productivity is very less. We are figuring out, we know biochar and very impressed the result what we are seeing with biochar, but the challenge is with us, the economics in this area particularly. So if you have any suggestion for us, please let us know how we can go ahead with biochar.
So on the email IDs I mentioned here, spawar@asqi.in, if you can email me just some broad numbers, like what are the crops and what are
Okay.
the current yields, what are the typical farm sizes, then we can start to work out some economics and say, okay, this is the various scenarios: 10% increase, 30% increase, 50% increase. We can carry out a few demonstrations to see what actually materializes for what dosage of biochar. And we can also calculate the distances and see what's the forfeiture of carbon credits, and hence what is the increase in the price on account of that, because overall economics still has to make sense. So those numbers we can work out and we can tell you this is the plan, this works.
Understood. I'll share the detail over mail. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Suraj. I have a few follow-up questions after Suraj's question, but I'll just make a quick announcement. Anyone that is joining from here or other platforms, you can also ask your question in Hindi. If you
Yeah.
have any, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself or post it in the chat box. Swapnil, I had a follow-up question to the question that Suraj asked. So we're talking about 1 to 1.5 or 2 tons once in 5 years. So what is the recommendation for the remaining seasons in those 5 years after the immediate add of enriched biochar? How can a farmer ensure that the biochar is again loaded up with those minerals and it's not necessarily high and dry and sucking up all the minerals back from the soil?
Sure. So I would say 2 3 alternatives. If they are doing crops like say sugarcane, then mulching is best and easiest. There is no nothing better than that almost. So if you're doing oil palm, sugarcane, things like that, then mulch what is being produced in the field anyway. That's good enough, more often than not. If it's a crop which is not so heavy on leaves and it is not enough biomass produced, then you can proactively purchase compost again. So that is obviously going to cost you only 5 6 rupees a kg. So you can buy half a ton, 1 ton of compost per acre. Add that. That will continue to have its own benefit independently of biochar, and it will continue to saturate the biochar. And then there is manure. So that can be cow dung and any other versions of biomass. Organic manure where it's available. So unfortunately, one of the trends has been to go towards fewer animals on the farm, which means now it's become like a rarity to see manure, which is so abundant back in the day. But yeah, if you have a Gaushala nearby, then one can. A lot of my cousins, for example, buy manure from Mumbai to take it to Nasik.
Yeah, that's it. That's a sad part, and we are talking about exporting Todang now.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said about 5 year period. That was also interesting. So how do you see this biochar? Where do you see the biochar go? What happens in 5 years? What is the need for a reapplication after 5 years? And as part of that, what is the longest trail, for example, that ASQI has done so far?
We've done only about a couple of years so far, so we can't claim it's 5 years. So 5 years is a more sort of conservative estimate. Technically, you can wait for even 10 years. But what generally happens is we tell farmers to apply 1.5 tons. Most of them will apply only half a ton and say, let's see how it goes. So we also tell farmers that, look, if it's starting to look too expensive to you, then do half a ton if at all you're forced to do half a ton, then next year do immediately another half a ton, and so on and so forth. So given all these vagaries and idiosyncrasies, we basically said, okay, 5 years is a good time to recheck it. We don't expect 5 years later a full 1 ton or 2 ton addition. Ideally, it should be done after a soil test when you see SOC, and if it is still it's doing reasonably well, then you don't need to put again. But this is like a booster dose. If you're doing 1 ton, 1.5 ton in year 1, now you can do with just half ton after 5 years.
Wonderful. Thank you, and I'll give the mic to Anand, who has a flood of questions for you.
Yeah, hi Swapnil. Thanks, Tejas. Swapnil, questions I have were, for the FPO, what are the expectations that you're looking for an FPO to come to you? Like a thing they to think about, like, what the size of the FPO, what kind of money are we looking at approximately, and, the labor thing, who's going to do it? Just some, if you can throw whatever your experience so far has been, obviously they can start thinking about it, and who should not think about it. क्योंकि FPO में काफी और बहुत चीज चल रहे हैं. The CEO is already burdened with so many things. So
Yeah.
So set some realistic what they should look for.
So we prefer FPOs to have a reliable handle on biomass, which is a big validation from their side. So they should be able to think about where to get 3,000 to 5,000 tons of biomass each year, which is a long period. So it's not each season. So each season is just about 1,500 to 2,000 tons. So they should understand what the farmers are currently doing with the biomass, and hence, is it possible to take it from them or buy it from them? Obviously, burning is the most obvious indication that you can just take it relatively easily. If they're already doing something good with the biomass, then maybe they should ask themselves, are we going to get this at all? And even if when we do our feasibility study, we'll tell them that you're not going to find the biomass. And we obviously should have 2 sources of biomass, one for each season, unless you happen to have oil palm or some such perennial crops, which is all year long. Best is to have 2. So, cotton or soybean, cotton or green gram, maize. So 2 is a good idea versus just a single one. Ability to sell, while we don't expect them to sell the biochar, we'll sell it. But ability to sell is a function of 2-3 things. One, farmers doing some cash crops, because the grain farmers may not be as forthcoming. So if the FPO is predominantly in a region which does grains, which is why we stayed away from Punjab so far, then we're not able to have enough offtake for the biochar. Although it is beneficial for those farmers also, and their payback period is also 1.5 years only, but they might be a bit more reluctant. Fruits, vegetables, cotton, sugarcane, soybean, oil palm, all of these are very good crops. So they should either in their members have those crops or have access to those areas, connections to those areas. I think that's the other one. Those 2 are big ones, and investments are about 1 crore. Not all of it capex, only half of it, slightly less than half is capex, rest is basically working capital. So they have to have some financial ability to have the money or borrow it from a bank, which will then imply that they will have to have certain turnover and certain history. But most of the banks are quite keen to lend to FPO as per the RBI directive to build that FPO book, if you will. So that's our general approach. Most of the FPOs we work with have ticked these boxes, if you will.
So how long is the payout then? I mean, is the carbon credit payout expected after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? How long does it take?
6 months.
6 months. And do you expect the FPO to track all the usage, where it is going as part of your DMRV? Do you do it? Or are you expecting farmers to enter something, their latitude, longitude, where the biochar was, eventually used? Is there a requirement from the DMRV to do that?
There is, but we do it.
Okay.
So we, for example, we promote the use of farm app also for that purpose also, which is, if it's then automatic that we have the mapping. So in that sense, it's useful, but even if it's not there, people are not on farm app, we still track it ourselves. We don't insist that farmers do it. We keep the details so that it's easy enough to submit. The FPO is not expected to do it. They don't need to be tech savvy. If they are, that's great, but that's not a requirement.
And are you expecting the farmers to bring the biomass to a central site where the FPO headquarters are? Or are you saying that, we'll find some position where geography will look at the map where the farmers are laid out and we'll go put something there? Are you expecting the FPO to keep a place to keep all these skins?
We generally operate in a manner where we sign up with FPO to say, okay, you figure it out, how to talk to farmers, how to arrange the transport and so on, and bring it to us at 20% or lower moisture. They can do it themselves. They can appoint an entrepreneur, give them a multi-year contract, have 2-3 of the entrepreneurs who basically have like some mechanization, best case, at the very least a good tractor, a couple of tractors, and local connects. That's the easiest model. Then you outsource it to someone who's good at this, and there's also additional income created in the process. If FPO has the ability to do it itself, nothing like it. But I've seen more often than not, they have enough and more things on their mind. So giving it to someone else saying you do it will guaranteed off take it from you, and you have the wherewithal. So some of them even have captive laborers who go with them to cut and bring the biomass. So that works better than saying farmers can bring it. So larger farmers also, we invite the larger farmers to bring it themselves also. That's not a challenge. They can bring it to a central location. Especially larger ones prefer to do that because then they get paid better for it. But all models work.
Is there storage that you plan for it? Because this is a very seasonal thing when the harvest happen. So what is your opinion on having this run continuously throughout the year versus just during the harvest times and when the availability of biomass is there? What has your experience been so far and what are you looking for?
We prefer not to store too much because it's bulky and then prone to fires and so on and so forth. So better is to keep it as little as possible, but we can't help it beyond a point. So that's why I said 2. So each season we do this thing. We don't do anything in monsoon anyway. So those 3 months are out. So September, we get a bunch of procurement, September, October, November, and then use it as it is. Then some storage for December, Jan. Then Jan, Feb, March, we again have different sort of harvests coming in. And then March to May, we end up storing again. So we want to reduce the length, which also working capital locked and storage capacity. But yeah, there is no way out. There are interestingly some perennial crops which are ideal, where like oil palm, you get supply all through year. So that's great. But not all crops are like that. So
right. So you had said that the labor issue, because even I'm in Buldana in Maharashtra, and we are not bad mouthing the district when we say there is burning. It is what it is. It is a fact.
Talk about it all the
time. Yeah, because labor issue is critical, and they have their opinion that, hey, what do I do? I don't have any, labor to help me out with this. So have you calculated where self-removal, like you said, for an entrepreneur to go out and remove it and all that, have you done the economics of it? And what is the distance radius are we looking at? I know you mentioned 200 kilometers, 50 kilometers, 20 kilometers. If an entrepreneur were to do it, what is the, if they have to go collect the biomass and bring it to a place, what is the radius that they should be thinking about to make it at least economically viable?
20 to 25 is enough. And more
I
often,
see.
that what we've seen is that where it helps is economy of scale, because one farmer to remove this will have to talk to the laborers and then get them for a couple of days and do it. And then those guys will again go away. So there's a lot of friction in that. But an entrepreneur who has his own set of permanent, semi-permanent laborers who are just doing this day in and day out for 2-3 months, then is easy, because then he just knows, okay, I have to go here today, go there today, tomorrow, and so on and so forth. And they keep doing that day in and day out, same thing. That's easier than a farmer hunting around for labor just for this. Right. Also, agri institutions have done some sort of mechanization innovations, especially in Vidarbha, where some of this is automated. So some entrepreneurs actually have those machines, like in Punjab, balers.
Right.
So they become de facto source for us. And we are also good for them because we guarantee offtake at a given price.
So the next question is on carbon credits. So $80 to $120 was the price you said on one credit. What is the percentage split for an FPO approximately, not any exact numbers? If they want to think about it, if an entrepreneur associates with you or an FPO associates with you or an NGO associates with you, how much does the FPO get and versus how much a farmer gets? Approximately, just numbers so we can, visualize it.
Our model, we don't give it to farmers because the farmers simply get a subsidized biochar. That is their benefit. So the producer gets it, which is in this case FPO. If they partner with us through investments, then we share it with them half and half, like 50%.
Right.
farmers are basically, see, unlike other sustainable farming techniques where the farmers have to do something differently, and that may increase yield, may not increase yield, but there is a cognitive and sort of financial load on them to carry that out, like AWD or DSR and so on. In biochar, they're out of it. They just bring the biomass, we pay them for it. They buy the biochar from us and they improve their yields and get benefits from it. So from their perspective, this is just a simple product. The producer, which if we do it, then we keep the carbon credits. If the FPO invests and we do it with them, then we split the carbon credits half and half.
Okay, got it. One more question I had was, how long does it take for you to train somebody to do Kontiki? Because one of the previous sessions we talked to another entrepreneur who's doing this in Kontiki method. He said 60 to 100 rounds of burning in Kontiki will be the practice that is required for somebody to get good at it, to improve the yield, So two questions here. One is that what is the typical yield you're looking at through Kontiki, for a general, any biomass you take? And how long does it take to train somebody to come to that level? Because obviously there is some skill involved, temperature checking, moisture checking, and when to quench it and all that. So what are you looking at?
So we do also think along similar lines, slightly shorter, maybe 40, 50 rounds probably is enough. That's about less than a month because you can do multiple rounds each day. Each length is about an hour. And if you prepare and handle the drying, that's about 4 hours. So you can do 3 processes in a day or at least 2. So in a month, you will be able to train somebody reasonably well. And
okay.
Yield is about 30 to 35%.
All right. And why, I mean, have you looked at other kinds of designs, the industrial size, semi-industrial ones that are coming now, mobile ones or some little different model than like the big drum ones, which have some kind of extra, machinery built into it to make it a little more robust. Have you looked at those? And after that, have you settled at Kontiki or have you also made any innovations to Kontiki?
We are looking at making innovations to Kontiki itself for a simple reason, 2-3 different reasons. One, it's globally approved as a methodology, so it's easy to create the carbon credits. Getting a new methodology approved is in starting from scratch again. The innovations in Kontiki we are doing are essentially on reducing labor, so that the plant becomes more profitable and is less dependent on vagaries of labor availability, and can also be set up in areas where labor is actually at a serious premium. But that's more moderate automation, not so much like a full-scale batch processing plant and so on. There, what we found out are limited research, and obviously we're still researching, and the technology is not settled yet. It's the proper carbon credit friendly industrial, semi-industrial technology is still evolving, and we've heard things like the plant breakdowns are quite frequent and so on. So we are a little bit wary of that. So I think, okay, what we need is basically carry out pyrolysis in the simplest and most robust manner. What we realize is that the quality of the biochar we produce is very high. And so while the process may look simple, it is actually quite efficient in its own right. Other than the labor thing, it is actually one of the more reliable, robust, and low-cost ways to make it. Then why reinvent the wheel? That's where our current thinking is. In future, we may figure out either improve Kontiki itself through some automations, and also potentially explore, especially where space and labor are at a premium, then explore, let's say, inside a factory, a food processing factory. Then you're probably better off with a semi-industrial machine.
Right. So I have one more question, and then I'll open it for others who might be listening, who might have questions. हिंदी में किसी को सवाल पूछना है तो पूछ सकते हैं आप. LinkedIn, Facebook और YouTube में जो सुन रहे हैं वो चैट बॉक्स में कमेंट में हिंदी में भी डाल सकते हैं. हम लोग वो सवाल यहाँ पूछेंगे. How do you test, Swapnil? Because you'll have so many decentralized plants and make sure you're on the right target as far as quality is concerned. Is there any thought to, because testing is expensive right now. We're looking at labs that are hardly there, or even the ones that are there, बहुत महंगा है. So what do we, going forward, what are your thoughts there on how do we make sure that the quality is maintained throughout this? Because there are different artisans involved, different biomass involved. So are you looking at, what are you looking at? Are you looking at fixed carbon percentage like 70%, 80%? What are your target? Is there a target there? And plus, how are you testing and maintaining quality?
So target is essentially 70% plus carbon as much as possible and less than 15% ash. That's the current plan, and we do one-time testing for heavy metals and other such matters. pH we test every time. We have a pH meter locally. Moisture also we check locally. Formal lab test is done routinely and randomly. We also use AI quite aggressively to basically map test efficacy with the look and feel of the biochar. So, for example, currently the plants are our own, so it's much more tightly managed. But in future, if we were to, we are partnering, and then some of them, unfortunately, let's say cut corners, then it will show up in our AI-based quick results faster, and will trigger a detailed testing. So AI is zero cost, near zero cost. And then with that, we say, okay, this triggers a detailed study. So now this is costly, but at least it brings out a problem or confirms that there isn't one.
Right. Okay, one last question on there's so many questions, but I want to limit because we're almost out of time, and I want to give others a chance as well. You said you grind the biomass into powder. What is the size you're looking at? I mean, if you don't want to share, it's a secret, that's fine. But, what is the powder size you're looking at, particle size that will give you some, optimal results when applied on the field?
1 to 2 millimeters.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, thanks, Swapnil.
Yeah. Similar.
Okay.
Underlying compost is similar, so we don't want to deviate too much from it. Not too big, not too small. Otherwise, it doesn't mix well.
I see. Okay. All right. Over to you, Tejas. Thanks a lot, Swapnil. Tejas, if you want to source other questions. Vibhishan, if you have any questions.
Question Tejas. Continue, Tejas.
Yes, I think there was a question from YouTube. Can biochar be fortified with Jivamrut?
Yes, short answer is yes. In fact, there are some innovations we're trying where we don't just add vermicompost to it, but also add a few other biostimulants, fungi, bacteria, soil-friendly additives which are approved by the government and adequately tested and approved, so to speak. So Jivamrut is one very good candidate for the same. What we've not yet carried out as research is the ratios. What is the efficacy? Does it go up or down because of being mixed with biochar? Are we better off just putting it independently? So those questions remain to be answered. But short answer is yes, and we are very much working on it.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Just one more question.
Go ahead, please.
मैं हिंदी में बात करता है कि जो शुगर केन का ट्रैश है, शुगर केन का ट्रैश का बारे में, क्योंकि अभी महाराष्ट्र में शुगर केन जाने के बाद जो ट्रैश गिरता है नीचे, तो लोग सब जला देता है उसको, और उनको जब पूछा कि आप क्यों जला देते हैं, तो उसमें कुछ वीड रहता है, पहला वीड, तो वीड भी जलता है, वीड का सीड भी जलता है, ऐसा उनका कहने का मतलब रहता है। लेकिन कुछ जगह पे ऐसा वीड नहीं रहता है, तभी भी लोग जलाता है। तो ये अभी बायोचार का हिसाब से वो ट्रैश को कौन सा एंगल से देखना चाहिए ताकि वो आगे का शुगर केन का जो रटूनिंग है या नेक्स्ट क्रॉप है कौन सा उसका रोटेशन में, उसको उसका बेनिफिट हो जाए, इसके बारे में क्या बात कर सकते?
सो एक्चुअली ये काफी अच्छा सवाल है इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कि क्या क्या यूज कर सकते हैं हम। तो रतून क्रॉप के लिए फॉर एग्जांपल हम रेकमेंड करते हैं हमेशा मल्चिंग करो, कुछ नहीं करते तो एटलीस्ट मल्च कर दो, तो उससे आपका सॉइल ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन बढ़ेगा और यील्ड इंप्रूव होगा। जो मैं धाराशिव का एग्जांपल दिया था इसी के लिए था कि वहाँ पे मल्चिंग इतना कॉमन है तो बायोमास बर्न भी नहीं होता और अवेलेबल भी नहीं है फॉर सेम रीजन, तो इसीलिए हम वहाँ पे सोच भी नहीं प्लांट की। तो जो आप जो बात कर रहे थे कि प्लांट जो शुगर केन रेसिड्यू बर्न करते हैं फार्मर्स, थिंकिंग की वीड भी जल जाएगा, और कुछ पंजाब में भी हमने ये सुना था कि ऐश आता है फार्म में तो अच्छी बात है, इट्स गुड फॉर सॉइल, ऐसे लगता है उनको, बट एक गलत सोच है। ऐश अच्छी होती है, मतलब मॉडरेटली, इट्स नॉट ग्रेट, बट ऐश का यूज होता है। बट अगर आप ऐश अलग जगह पे बनाते हो तो कि आपने ये सारा बायोमास इकट्ठा किया, फिर जलाया, फिर वापस लेके आए, फिर डाला, तो शायद थोड़ा बहुत बेनिफिट है। अगर आप फार्म पे ही जलाते हो, उसका ड्रास्टिक इफेक्ट ये होता है कि उसमें जो माइक्रोबियल एक्टिविटी है सॉइल में वो रिड्यूस हो जाती है। सॉइल आपको इसेंशियली आप सॉइल को बर्न कर रहे हो, तो वहाँ पे सॉइल की जो लाइफ है सॉइल के अंदर वो थोड़ी सी उसमें मरती जाती है, तो सॉइल क्वालिटी डिग्रेड होती है बर्न करने से हमेशा। और वो थोड़ा बहुत ऐश उसमें बेनिफिट होता है, वो तो बहुत ही मॉडरेट है, उसके कंपैरिजन में जो डैमेज है बहुत ज्यादा है। तो और कुछ नहीं तो सॉइल की क्वालिटी मेंटेन करने के लिए भी आप उसको न जलाए तो उसका काफी ऑलरेडी इम्पैक्ट उसको दिखना चालू हो जाएगा। तो इसीलिए हम शुगर केन, जिसको मराठी में पाचक बोलते हैं, उसका यूज करके बायोचार बनाने के लिए कोल्हापुर सातारा साइड में एक प्लांट जल्दी शुरू करने वाले हैं इसी टारगेट से।
थैंक यू तेजस।
थैंक यू विभीषण। अगर किसी के पास कोई सवाल है तो वो पूछ सकता है। इफ एनीवन हैज एनी क्वेश्चंस यू कैन अनम्यूट, इफ नॉट आई थिंक वी विल डू द क्लोजिंग सेशन। Okay, I think Swapnil, I think that was really great, and we want more and more of stakeholders in biochar come in and openly and actively engage with farmers, co-entrepreneurs, other please. As I said, the target is very steep. The slope is very steep for us to even have a habitable planet, and I think uh, a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnerships are key for this. And thanks a lot for taking the time to come in. And I'll leave with a hook. I would love to have you back, maybe with a few few sessions, because there are some topics that were very keen for me. I'd love for us to maybe come back and talk about hydrochar, what it is, maybe talk about AI and biochar production, and plant and crop specific insights that you might have, having looked at oil palm, having looked at sugarcane. That would be very interesting if we find time in future. But there is a, if you have any feedback and closing comments for us, it'd be wonderful.
No, it's great to hear all the questions and the interest in this field. And as I see, this is a killer app for agriculture, climate smart agriculture, or the silver bullet. So we are very excited about it. And one of the hopes I will leave you with is that I would love to do another session in Marathi, let's say sometime, as and when that does come about. So I'd love to talk to farmers, FPOs, fellow entrepreneurs in Marathi in a subsequent session. So yeah.
Yes, and one of the things that I was also going to say to you and the speakers is that we do plan to continue the series in English, but plan to start something in Hindi first, and also Marathi, because Shikru has been a champion in Marathi specific things. So yeah, Hindi and Marathi are coming up very fast. So we would love to have you back in Marathi. We're very targeted on the regions that you are also operating.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Super.
I think we did 90 minutes. We crossed the 90-minute mark. Thanks a lot, Swapnil. It was a pleasure to learn a lot about your operations, and we wish to have you back here. And we try to come back here mostly every Saturday to try and bring in various stakeholders. And thanks a lot. Thanks for your time.
Thanks everyone for joining in. Thanks Tejas. Thanks everyone for inviting me.